be talking.
Going live.
We're going to go live. Getting prepared. We're not in a hurry.
No. Looks like that mic is just a little foggy. You might want to wipe it. I think it got foggy on the lamp.
Oh, the lens?
Yeah. Just because it's so cold outside.
There we go. That's got to be it.
Just because it's so cold outside. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That looks so much better.
It might have been the oil on my fingers.
It could have been. You know what? I probably have some on my glasses,
We're going
too.
live soon here. It's 4:58.
Do we have anybody actually
We're going to go
watching?
live at 5. We don't know yet. So this is sort of a pre-thing.
Yeah.
It's going live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn or Twitter. I can't remember now.
Nice.
So
We'll have to get it to go live on TikTok at some point, too.
I don't think the platform I use is called StreamYard, so I don't think it goes to TikTok.
Okay.
But we could do a TikTok too. We could
Yeah.
probably do that at the same time as doing this. I'll do that right there as soon as I get this thing started.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get this party started. Ready? Set?
Greetings, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of the Synergy Cafe online show, featuring speaker, entertainer, close-up illusionist, and marketing alchemist, MagicBrad. It's the Internet lifestyle show about career, finance, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. We're moving the online chatter over to real-life activity. And now, please welcome your host of Synergy Cafe, MagicBrad.
Kind of a topic. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and berries, welcome to the Synergy Cafe show. And I'm here with my friend Casey Peak. And we're going to talk about bending time.
Ooh, fun.
And why did this come up? I think this came up because I was listening to some entrepreneurial people about the concept of passive income. And some people don't think that passive income is a thing. They don't think it's possible because you have to do something.
Right.
And that's true. But to me, passive is you did something and then the income comes later down the road.
Yeah.
So the thing was about leverage, because he started talking about you can work more hours or try and make more money per hour,
Sure.
but we're limited to only 24 hours in a day. And then it kind of occurred to me that sometimes time seems to go by fast. Now, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
You've had those situations,
Yeah.
like this thing. We got here at what? 4:30?
Call it 4:35, 4:40.
And then at 4:44, we were setting stuff up, and all of a sudden it was 5 o'clock.
Yep.
How did that time go so fast?
Right.
Because I was here early in the parking lot, and it was long.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in the head, the perception of time.
Yeah.
Time's just a delusion.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a Buddhist thing about that, I think, where they're talking about what is it? Nope, not Buddhism. It is Taoism. They're talking about the awareness.
Sorry.
So they're talking about awareness, and you know how they're talking about how you focus, and by giving your focus to something that it brings your awareness, it brings you here and now, which makes the time passage differently than if your focus is elsewhere.
Well, now we're going to get into the metaphysical topic, which is one of our favorites, that kind of thing, because I remember in an earlier episode, I talked about when I had that out-of-body experience in Bali.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if it was 5 minutes or 5 hours, because time was irrelevant. So that's an interesting thing, because I've had situations where, like when I was doing one of my magic gigs, I'm thinking, God, it's rush hour traffic. I'm running late. Took me a long time to get dressed and pack everything up and everything. I got to get to my gig. It's way over in Eden Prairie, and I'm in Fridley. How am I going to get over there?
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow I get there.
And on time?
Yeah.
Nice.
So how does that work?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, driving is one of those times where I notice the time bend the most. Like I get inside the car, I start driving.
Right.
And it's not because I'm focused on driving. because literally my body goes into autopilot whenever I'm
Right.
driving.
You get into that alpha state, and it's sort of a hypnotic.
Mm-hmm.
Then you realize, holy shit, I'm going to Duluth. What happened? I just want to go pick up some eggs.
Well, I haven't had that happen, but yeah, I'll start driving, and I go wherever I'm going, and I'll drive there, and by the time that I get there, I look down, I'm like, it's been 40 minutes already, because it'll be a long drive. I'll be like, it's been 40 minutes. Okay, where in the world did all that time go?
So how does that
Kind of
work?
interesting.
How does that work when digitally with our Gregorian calendar of 365 days in a year, split into 12 months and 24 hours in a day? How does that work where time seems to go fast or slow?
Right. It's interesting. There is a book that I read once. I can't remember the name of it, but it talks about the way that people perceive time around the world. And they were talking about the Western view of time and how time equates to money. And that's something we hear a lot, actually.
Yep.
So
Which
time
is
is money. Time is money.
Which is an illusion.
The only other place on the entire planet where they view time the same way is Germany. No other
Really?
place on the planet do they view time the same way. In Argentina, in fact, it was very interesting because whenever I went down there to go for work, it very much was not like time is money. It's people come first. People in relationships come first. So people oftentimes are late somewhere because they stopped to talk with a client or to talk with a coworker or something like that. And it's not that they were talking about anything that was,
Sure.
actual work. It was just relationship building. And they're totally fine with it. They just spend the time doing that. You can be there 45 minutes late, and as long as you're getting something done, and you're like, oh yeah, that was my coworker and a client, and we were just talking about projects that they're working on and stuff, which is mainly relationship building. It's not like you're really
You
talking
wonder
about
how that
reason.
works.
They're
Like Costa Rica, they call it Tico time.
Tico time.
Yeah.
Never heard of that. That's interesting.
And then in Jamaica, it's like the Jamaican time is like everything's easy. Irie.
Yeah. Irie, man.
I remember I used to go down there every year for about 11, 12 years. So we'd become Jamericans, and we just kind of deal with it. And you see the new people that just got off the ship, and they're, Jesus Christ, I've been here for 15 minutes and I've ordered my beer and I haven't got it yet. And they start nagging. And we're like, man, chill out. It'll be here. Order 2 next time.
Yeah, right.
But you're right. So this Western culture, we've been raised that you go to school, the bell rings, you go to class, you sit there, you do your thing till it's nap time, and then the bell rings, you go home.
Yep.
The Pavlov's dog thing.
Yep. And you always have to be at the right time, right place, at the right time, and you're always chasing that. And it's like, so you always have to be there 5 minutes early. I know some people are that way. Some people are 15 minutes early everywhere. And
well, I'm that way. I'm because of my magic performance, I got to be there on the right time. I can't be late. So that's part of that is brought in, but I'm not as strict as I used to be. I'm more like, it'll happen when it happens. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't have to happen. So I'm much more laid back than I used to be. And I didn't like it if someone's late, because I look at, you're 3 minutes late. That's 3 minutes I could have had for my life.
Right. Right. No, I agree with that. I don't actually like being late. Unfortunately, over the last few years, I've actually been more prone to being late. Part of that is because, having a large family is a newer experience for me. But at this point, it's been several years. You'd think I'd get the gist of it by this point. But, it's
well,
part of the thing.
Going back into more of a spiritual vibe, is that kind of things happen when they're supposed to happen. So, before they had clocks and stuff, they'd look at the sun and figure, I'll meet you down by the stream when the sun is high in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to the stream and you just sit and watch the fish and
chill
out and get more in tune with nature, probably. And then when the dude shows up, you have your little powwow or meeting, or, that was kind of racist, wasn't it?
No, I don't think so. I know there's a lot of people who think it is.
Well, we have the liberty to do that, to say whatever the hell we want on this little thing until we get deplatformed or demonetized or whatever. So it's no big deal.
They'd have a hard time saying that to me. I'm Cherokee, so you know they
Oh,
get
so
to,
you
they
gave
get
me
to stick
you
that.
gave me permission. We talked about this in briefing. It's okay. You know, let's talk about that for a little bit because I had a really cool experience. Was doing a magic show up in Orr, Minnesota. You know where that is?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's way up there, almost Canada. And they had this thing where the white man, the pale faces, and the Native Americans would get together in this school thing, and it was a bonding thing for the two cultures.
Yeah.
And they had a drum ceremony, a powwow thing. And I'm sure you've been to them.
I'm not in Minnesota. I haven't been to one in Minnesota.
It was
yet.
an amazing experience.
Nice.
In the venue that I was at. I'm getting chills right now, but it was, you could just feel spirits or whatever the heck it was. And they're doing these drums and all these guys doing these dances and stuff, the ring dances. And
Oh, it's cool.
it was wild. There's a friend of mine, I haven't talked to him for a long time, Larry Yazzie. He does the dances and stuff. One of those ring dancers or whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It is. It's amazing.
Yeah, I haven't been to many ceremonies, Native American traditions or ceremonies here in Minnesota yet. I used to go to them all the time back in California. Since I moved here, though, I haven't been to any.
Where was the
in fact,
Cherokee Nation? Where was that? Were they?
Over in the Carolinas and
Oh, yeah,
Missouri through to Missouri and kind of like in those areas, all the way in that area. It's kind of hard. So are you talking about like post Western world or pre-Western world?
I know it changed, but
because they actually have two different maps.
Yeah, it moves around. Who owns what, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and then of course, you know.
How about
Trail
a
of
sweat
Tears
lodge?
and all
Have you
that.
ever experienced a sweat lodge?
I have an open invitation to go to a sweat lodge in Wisconsin. I have done a sweat lodge before. It was a very long time ago. And I do regular kind of Swedish, you know, saunas and stuff
Okay,
like
sure.
that. Yeah. So like, I mean, it's kind of the same thing in a lot of ways, but there's
It
more
is.
ritual to the Native American style of it. But yeah, I have an open invitation to go to one in Wisconsin. It's pretty cool.
You should probably check it out.
Yeah.
I've done a couple here, and then I did one in Tulum, which is really cool. It was a full moon when we did it. I think it was a full moon, but it was pretty cool. Right in there with the Mayan people. I mean, descendants or whatever.
That's cool.
It was a really neat.
That'd be really
experience.
cool.
Yeah, you ever been to Tulum?
I have not.
Interesting space because they got those pyramids there, and it's all very sacred space. And Monica and I were down there, and she saw this rock, and she picked up this rock, and she was looking at it and stuff. And the guy walks over and says, "You got to put that back down. Can't take the rock because there's rules with that stuff."
Right.
And then you can go wherever you want. And we went, rented a motorcycle and drove around to some places. It's bizarre. You go through these woods and stuff, and then all of a sudden there's this pyramid in the middle of the woods or the jungle.
That's cool.
Wild. It was cool stuff.
Yeah. Was it like a step pyramid?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, those are cool. I figured you said Mayan design. I can picture that in my head. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
There's a lot of unanswerable things. Like in Costa Rica, I have a friend that has a bunch of land down there, and they've got these big spheres. I mean, big. They're 4 feet, 6 feet, perfectly spherical, not rough, smooth. Where do they come from, and how did they make them?
Right.
Yeah,
it's trippy. Oh, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know how they make them. I mean, I would assume that they would make them by hand, but to make them perfectly spherical, and I've read about those. They say they said that they're perfectly spherical.
Right.
Like it would be almost impossible to make it without modern machinery.
Well, have you seen how they do that when they make like crystal balls and stuff? It's basically it's 3 things that are spinning. So it sits on 3. Oh, do that. And the ball, these things are spinning, and the ball is just kind of turning around, and that's kind of how they do it. So Maybe they made something like that. They chip it
I
rough,
don't know.
and then they put it on this thing. Maybe that's how they made them. I don't know.
Well, you see those molcajetes that they have in Mexico, and they're basically, they cook in them, and they're it's made out of volcanic rock, and it's just, it's like a big mortar and pestle type thing that they have.
Oh,
But they're called a
yeah,
molcajete, and they're so perfectly round on the inside. And obviously, modernly, they're made out of something like, they're made with a machine
right.
that cuts into them. But if you don't make it with a machine, right, I would imagine that the old ones, they would just put like this big rock on, and then they would just start gyrating and moving it, and it would start to wear it out to where it becomes circular.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. They have. It's interesting how they have this similar kind of thing in different cultures, because they have those. It's a mortar and pestle kind of thing in Bali. That's called a chubek, I think, because like Alex Trebek, it's called chubek. Similar kind of thing. It's
Cool.
It's a black, and it's all perfectly smooth on the inside, and somehow they had to do that.
Yeah.
Those things are amazing to me. And then nowadays you got these big giant skyscrapers, and we figure out how to do that. It's still kind of baffling to me how that stuff works.
Yeah. The engineering of the skyscrapers is pretty fascinating, especially considering that they have to calculate the bend of the building based on the shear wind. So in the way that it behaves in the wind. So like if you get, hurricane force winds, the hurricane force winds, as they go around the whole structure, it's actually going to cause vibration in the structure, and it's going to cause the structure to sway. So they have to actually calculate what that's going to be like in the building as they're building it. Because if they do it wrong, the whole thing will collapse. It's like what happened to that. There was a bridge that happened to. What was it? I think it was like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. There was a big bridge that they built, and they miscalculated the wind
and it started
shear.
swaying.
It started, the wind went over it, and the howling from the wind ended up creating vibrations that mixed with the driving going across it, and the vibrations started making it literally twist, and then it broke apart, and the whole thing fell apart.
That's an interesting thing. I mean, we're sort of off topic. I don't think we had a topic. We're just talking about cool stuff.
That's kind
out
of
of high school. I did some drafting, design, and strength and material stuff, and there was a parking ramp where the beam was starting to go down a little bit. So the brilliant guy thought, what I got to do is I'll put some kind of like a thing in the middle to hold it up. Turns out that this beam it was concrete and steel, and the steel was there for a reason. It was supposed to do that. But he put that thing in there. So what that ended up doing was bending the other way, because it was now going up. It was bending the other way, and that's what collapsed it. Because they put in a column to support it, that's what made it collapse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I actually, in my building I'm currently in, you can see where the beams meet, and they have these joists in between, and you can tell that it actually drops and then rises. So it has shifted over time. And if anybody were to ever come in here, I know you guys can't see it, but if anybody were to ever come in here and they were to actually, change the way that is shifted or anything like that, it would absolutely cause structural failure, because they plan for those types of things. It's very weird. It's cool. I mean, it's all math.
That's
but,
interesting. What's our other
have to
topic?
understand more stuff.
Let's get back on track. What was our other part? Do you remember the other part that was
let me see. Let's see. We had, is there more beyond this life?
Oh, yeah.
Time being an illusion. We didn't really address whether time is an illusion.
Well, I think it is. The way, because you look at it digitally, we'll summarize and conclude that the perception of it is different for different people at different times.
Yeah.
So I think it's an illusion. It's not real.
Yeah, absolutely. It's based on our own experience. My wife jokes that I have no concept of time, because which I don't in some ways.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, we're trying to do something. We got to get out the door, but before we go, I'm going to finish washing these dishes. You don't have time for that. We got to go.
Right.
So if you don't want to be late, we got to get in the car and get out of here. And then even if it was a little bit late and you did do the dishes and then you go to your destination, for some reason you managed to get there. So to me, spiritually speaking, there's some kind of higher power that's making the stuff work.
Right.
Like, have you ever been in a hurry and then the car in front of you is some old lady driving real slow?
Yeah.
That's telling you to slow the fuck down.
Sure.
I mean, slow the F down. What am I doing talking like that? I don't normally curse. Oh yeah, well, we're going to talk about the other part. The what was the second part? I forgot.
The second part was,
You forgot too.
is there more beyond this life? That was the other thing we were supposed to talk about.
Yes, that's something.
Is there more beyond this life?
Yeah, because you wonder, okay, when you're dead, are you just dead? Because then what's the heck's the difference? What difference does it make?
I don't think it matters while we're here. If you're in this illusion, which I think it is, I think this is all an illusion.
The Matrix thing.
No, I think that the way that we perceive this world, we put ourselves in an organic construct. So we are here in an organic construct that interfaces in this. I know everybody calls it a 3D world, but it's really not. It's a fourth dimensional world because we have time and space that's involved in that. So it makes it fourth dimensional. We're in this fourth dimensional world, and we have all of these concepts that are all based on the way that our brain perceives things. However, our brain does not function in this 3D world the way that other things function in this 3D world. This actually breaks the rules all the time because the brain actually exists in a higher dimension.
The brain or the mind?
Well, the brain, as in the organic structure of the brain, the mind, as in
the three-dimensional gray matter.
The three-dimensional gray matter does not function in 3 dimensions. They're finding out that there's some quantum connection, the way that it's actually, the way that it moves. The brain does not actually perceive time the way that our consciousness is perceiving time, because like the brain, right? We're perceiving time because we have something to measure it to. The brain is not, it can't measure time in the same way. We're actually, it's the physical inputs that we have with the eyes and the skin and the hearing and all of this kind of stuff that we extrapolate the time out of. So, but the brain is not necessarily even perceiving that time. The brain is actually perceiving things outside of time. We can think ahead in time. We could perceive the past as though it's happening now. We can do all of these types of things that are outside of time. So it doesn't actually function in normal 3 dimensions. Like the rest of our body is kind of trapped here in these 3 dimensions, but that is not. There's some quantum interfacing that goes on there.
Quantum interfacing.
For lack of a better term. I'm not a neuroscientist.
No, just the concept of like when someone says, "Oh, I'm going to create something," they think, "Okay, I'm going to use my imagination. I'm going to create something. I've got a concept, so I conceive something, and then I manifest it into reality."
Mm-hmm.
But that was all built off of stuff that you knew in your head, your physical things,
sure,
images and stuff. Is there something that is? We can't right now think of something that is not from our past.
Well, I can come up with an example of how this works. So, just based off of what you said, right?
We talked about this before.
Michelangelo, for example, right? Michelangelo would look at a block of granite and he just removes all the stuff that's around the statue that already lives inside that block of granite.
Right.
And he talks about doing this. Well, that is absolutely perception outside of time. He knows what it's going to be. He looks at it and he says, that's what this is going to be. And then he literally removes all the material out.
But what I'm getting at is he came up with those dimensions of what he saw from his past. So when he creates Michelangelo, it's a sculpture of a man.
I would say he's creating it from the future. I think he's actually perceiving what he knows it's going to be, and then he's working off of
Right, but
what
I'm
it's going to be
saying,
towards the future.
I'm saying, what if he didn't have those tools?
Mhm.
Like I'm going beyond the human consciousness
Mhm.
and into like aliens or non-aliens. I can't
Oh, sure.
explain it because it's unexplainable.
Okay.
So what if, like say for example, you're going to create an ice sculpture, and all I've
Mhm.
got is I've got this liquid water, and this ice sculpture is going to be Michelangelo, but in the form of a giraffe ink pen. I know it doesn't make any sense. And I'm using objects that we're familiar with so that I can only use those words to come up with this concept of this thing. So
Sure.
it's water, and now somehow you got to freeze the water so that it's solid so that I can chip it away and make the giraffe ink pen Michelangelo.
Okay. That's interesting.
It is. So, but it's this kind of thing that our gray mat, this is a bizarre episode because now I'm just kind of talking about stuff that's totally weird and bizarre.
That's okay. Maybe we'll get more viewers.
Well, you never know. I mean, can you deny that I'm actually speaking the truth? Comment. Let's argue. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a debate. What's the difference between an argument, a discussion, and a debate?
How loud
Probably
you
volume. I was just gonna say. It's all about volume.
Right. Let's turn this way just a little bit.
Here.
There we go.
No, just
There we
turn
go.
it. How do you want
Perfect. Perfect. I'm a little more on there. I was having to lean way over.
do the lean.
Yeah. That's
But
funny.
the things that we can create or conceive in our mind are out of things that we've already experienced.
Sure.
And that's how we create our future. That's why, in my opinion, if you can get into a meditative state and do away with the stuff that you believe and create something totally new, you have no idea what it's going to be.
Sure.
It could be something really bizarre. Like I mentioned, no, I don't think I mentioned it to you. I mentioned it to someone else. The idea of the electric cars are not a good thing because the batteries are made over in China and they're the lithium is mined in like African slave labor things. So the electric cars aren't so good.
Sure.
And I heard that somebody was able to create a combustion type vehicle out of water because it separates the hydrogen and the oxygen and that makes it flammable.
Hydrogen combustion,
Yeah.
which is pretty easy to do. You just
Pretty
do it with
brilliant.
you do it out of electrolysis. Yeah.
Yeah. And I even heard of a computer that worked off of hydrogen and oxygen because that's a binary system. So the computer works off of water, which is deep thought.
There are quantum computers that are out there now that actually store large amounts of data in ice and water, because water literally stores information.
Right. Like the Masaru Emoto ice crystal guy.
I am not familiar with that guy. There's a lot of people who talk about the subject matter. I don't think I've heard of that guy.
Yes. He would freeze water and he would take it and put water in a glass and write love on it and freeze it. And the crystals formed really nice. And he put water in another glass and write hate on it and freeze it. And the crystals would form all shitty.
Weird.
Because of the word.
That's interesting.
It is. So it's the consciousness of the spoken word or the intention that goes into it, which creates the beauty versus the ugly.
There's this thing that a lot of people do, and my wife totally believes in this. She does a lot of this kind of stuff. So they'll take water, right? Because most of the water that we get, once it comes from a plant, unless you're pumping it out of the ground, if it goes through a plant and everything else, they do all these chemicals to the water and they send it through all these centrifuges and pumps and everything else. By the time you get the water, the concept is that it's dead water. So the water, it doesn't have really anything in it that's still alive. Sure. It's filled with all these chemicals and everything else. So you get the water, you purify the water, and then they send it through these centrifuges where the water swirls as it's going down, and they put it over a little bed of crystals as it's going over the centrifuge. They'll put like different types of crystals in there to add the energy back to the water, and then they will then drink that water. Now, I know that it does something for remineralization, right? Remineralization is a real thing. You need to do that with your water if you purify all your water.
Where do the minerals come from?
Right?
The crystals?
Yeah, a lot of times people put like they'll put like some bedrock layer in it of like a lime and basalt and different things like that. Just they'll put stuff in there on purpose that literally will extract low amounts of minerals in order to remineralize the water. But even if you don't do that, the crystals do have a minor amount of mineralization that you will get a little bit more out of it. However, what's interesting about this, and there's people who are getting microscopes and checking this, the structure of the water, it's unstructured before you send it through. And then by the time you're done, the water is now structured.
Right.
And since water holds memory, right? Drinking structured water, theory is that we actually have access to that memory without knowing it. So drinking the structured water after it goes through all these crystals and everything else is much better for you. And there's people who swear by it. My wife being one of them. She's like, yeah, I feel so much better whenever I drink out of this than drink out of this. And
does it affect you?
I have to say it tastes better. I think it tastes better, which is, human beings have evolved our taste of, especially of water, to let us know if the water is clean. So that is a big thing. And so if I think that the water tastes better, that should be telling me, oh, the water's better for you, right? But that's subjective. Like, I'm not one of those people who goes off of subjective data all the time. So I'm not positive. I'm not positive.
Well, it's an interesting thing because of the placebo effect. So if she believes it's healthier, then it's healthier.
Probably.
Because she believes it.
Yeah.
And then someone that doesn't believe it, it wouldn't be. So it's sort of the spoken word. So
right.
It's the I am thing. If I say it, then it is.
Yeah.
And I just lost my train of thought, but it was one of those deep thoughts because it's that kind of thing that let's go beyond the crystals and the minerals and the stuff you can find on the atomic chart and all that kind of stuff, and just realize it's intention.
So vibration.
I'm going to drink this water because it is good for me. It's healthy water.
Right.
I said so. And I have a connection with the
all
that is, and all that is says, yes, ingest this water. It's good for you.
There is an old Native American belief system where you don't eat sick animals. So they talk about whenever you're out hunting and stuff like that, you don't kill and consume the sick animals, right? Because you are consuming their strength, but you're also consuming their weakness. So you don't want an animal that is sick. And totally makes sense. Like, you would want to stay away from that because if they have a disease, it could pass something on to you, right? Sure. There's obviously there's reasons like that, but it goes beyond that. Like, Native Americans truly believe that you transfer the energy of one item to another when you're consuming it or eating it. And this went across many of their different cultures. There was the powwows I used to go to in Southern California. I think there was like the largest one I went to. There was 168 tribes that was at the powwow, and this is pretty much was a belief across all of them. Every single one of them believed that.
It makes sense. And if you want to take it a step further than that, if you're connected with source, you could ingest the dirty animal and say, I don't want the bad stuff. I just want the good stuff. So let the bad stuff pass through me because I won't accept it and I'll take the good stuff.
Right. And then you get vomiting and diarrhea.
That might be your physical self doing it, but it might be your like, we're getting into some gross stuff here now, but I had a friend of mine that didn't think I was healthy because I don't have that many bowel movements.
Okay.
Now, how is that? Am I full of shit? I'm not a big guy.
You're vegetarian, aren't you?
No.
No, you're not vegetarian.
No.
Okay.
So I ingest stuff, and I just think that my metabolism processes the stuff I need. It takes all the stuff that's I
Sure.
need is good.
Well,
And
you probably have a really healthy gut biome.
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think there's like I find myself healthy when I take showers in the morning. My consciousness is saying that I'm baptizing myself. I'm washing all toxins free of me.
Sure.
And as I'm breathing, I'm taking in good energy. And every time I exhale, it's putting out bad energy.
Yeah.
So I think I'm healthy that way. I've got all my regular teeth, and I don't have any cavities. They're starting to rot a little bit. I got a loose one back here. But other than that, they're all real.
Sure.
I don't have any broken bones. I don't have any aches or anything like that. And I think I'm 66. And I think a lot of it is my mindset that I choose not to accept disease.
Sure.
And some people say, you're full of shit. Well, I guess I'm full of shit.
That's pretty funny. Yeah,
I don't have like stomach aches and stuff like that. Oh, your intestines must be all plugged up, and no, I poop fine.
Well, there's a lot to say about that, but there's also something I think to say about the consumption of it as well, because like if you are consuming things that are more negative for you on a regular basis, I mean, it is going to affect your body. And that's one of the things that a lot of the modern vegetarians that they believe in. Like modern vegetarians, they talk about like, oh well, you're ingesting that animal suffering. And not all of them feel that way, but there is a large percentage, I would say, that feel that they are actually consuming the mistreatment of the animals. And
I believe that. I remember I quit eating chicken for a while because I used to watch TV in bed, and I'd wake up and there was a program on cable TV. It was the processing of chicken and how they literally beat the feathers off these things with these little rubber fingers. And I thought, you guys are cruel. And all that energy is going into that poor chicken, and I'm going to eat it?
Right.
So I quit eating chicken for a while.
Yeah.
But I look at it as I'm able to do away with that evil stuff, and I'll ingest it for the protein, and that's good for me. And I don't need all the fear stuff, and forgive the way it was processed and all that stuff.
It's funny that you mentioned how I'd stop eating chicken. It was not for spiritual reasons. It was for an incident that happened. I stopped eating chicken for several years too. I actually went to a famous batter and fry place that used to have a certain Southern gentleman that is posted on all their stuff that I will not name just in case. and I went there and I got a fried chicken sandwich. And I get the sandwich and I bite into it, and the outside was hot and crispy and the inside was raw. The chicken was raw.
Ew.
And I immediately was like, okay, that's gross. So we drove back around, and it's literally the second bite I took. I noticed that this was a problem, right? The first bite I took, it was fine because it was right on the outside. It was once I got to the middle, right? It's towards the center. It was like almost purely raw, right in the
That's
center.
chicken
It was like,
sushi.
yeah, it was so gross. and so we drive back around, and we go back, and we told them, hey, look, you gave me a sandwich. The chicken sandwich is raw. Oh, you took a bite out of it. We can't take it back. And I was like, that's not the way this works. You tried to poison me. Here, take this back. Literally, they argued with me until I had to call, and I said, okay, can you give me the number to corporate so I can call them? They gave me the number to their store, which I then called, and the same person I had just talked to picked up. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? That's me channeling my mother there. My mother says things like that. Are you kidding me right now? So I eventually had to go through this whole thing, and the rigmarole left such a thing in my head. Like it was stuck in my head because I had to spend so much time on it. Going back to the time thing, so much time in my head was spent on having to focus on eating raw chicken that
Yeah,
I did
stigma.
not want to eat chicken again for years.
I can see that.
It was like 4 years before I would eat chicken again.
Going back to the vegetarian thing, had this woman that I met out in California when I was out there, and she was a vegetarian. And I asked her a serious question, but she got ballistic with me. I asked her, what about when you pull the roots, the carrot, out of the ground and all those small feather roots? Doesn't the carrot feel that when you're ripping all those little roots off there? And she thought I was mocking her, and she got all ballistic and crazy and mean and angry. But I wasn't. I was serious.
I've gotten that reaction before too.
Yeah. I mean, the poor chicken with the feathers getting beat off, and then the carrot with all the little feeder roots getting ripped out.
Mm-hmm. You know, they have these cool little things that you can buy now. They're little electronic little things that you can hook up to plants, and it converts the electrical energy from the plants into music, into sounds, right? And so it actually tells you what they're feeling and what they sound like, right? You can actually literally see what they're feeling. And so they did this study in a greenhouse where the guy hooked it up to a whole bunch of different plants. And whenever he went in to go prune, the plants hated it. They were so mad. So he would go in there, and all of a sudden, all the music would change, and they'd get all like upset and go, ah. And then he was like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I thought, if I burned them. And as soon as he had that thought, and this is literally him like writing all the notes, as soon as he had the thought about burning them, they all freaked out, like every single plant. And mind you, they're all in pots, right? It's not all the greenhouses. It's not like it's all in the root structures all connected and everything else. So something, I don't know whether it was chemical throughout the air or whether it was psychic or what.
Plant pheromones.
It was crazy though. But as soon as he had the thought, and then he documented all this, all the plants freaked out in the whole room. So then he went, okay, so I'm not going to do this thing. And then they all calmed down.
So
it's pretty crazy.
When we hear about all these things like this, how come that stuff isn't more mainstream? If those are the things like the Emoto, I can't remember his name, like the ice crystal guy, that's a common thing. Is it a myth that a lot of people believed, or is it real true thing?
I don't know.
And I guess the way to do it is to freeze your own crystals and write your own jars.
Right.
And like stuff like that. There must be a simple little device you could put on a plant and threaten to chop its head off and see if it squeals.
Right. It's cool. You can buy them too. They're not very expensive. You could totally buy them. You should get a link and pop it into the video afterwards.
Maybe. I'll have to take a peek, see. Get them on Amazon, right?
Yeah. Well, no. Yes, on Amazon, you can get some of them off of Amazon, but there's a couple of really specific ones that are out there, and these people make them themselves that are way better than the rest that are out there. So you just have to find a link to.
They're probably like sensitive, like a Scientology e-meter.
The Scientology e-meter.
Do you know about those?
Do you believe in Scientology e-meters?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you believe in thetans? In case anybody doesn't know, a thetan is in Scientology. The theory is that these intergalactic being basically trapped us all here on this planet in this realm, put a barrier around the planet so nothing else can interface with us, and then it threw all of these like intergalactic slaves into a giant volcano here on the planet and killed all of us. And so all of us that are being reborn over and over and over again, we have these thetans attached to us, which are basically alien ghosts. Essentially, they're alien ghosts that are connected to us. I mean, Scientology, for those of you who don't know, was written by L. Ron Hubbard, who was a science fiction writer. So of course it's going to sound a little science fiction-y, right? In case you are a Scientologist, don't report us. We're nobodies. You don't need to report us and, have this whole powwow about how we need to be canceled because of Scientology. Don't go the way of South Park with us here. You don't need to do that.
South Park. That's a whole nother. I was down in California for a while, so I spent some time at the Scientology Celebrity Center.
Yeah, we have the main one here in Minnesota. We've got
we've got one.
Well, the one that's here is supposed to be the one of the most important churches that they have.
It's not
That's
on
why it's
Nicollet
huge.
Mall anymore, is it in St. Paul? Used to be on Nicollet Mall, but there's one
Yeah.
on St. Paul by the Children's Theater.
Yeah, the one by Children's Theater is
But
the
it
one that I'm
depends on what
thinking
you
of.
mean
It's
by a
huge.
theta or thetan. Theta being.
Thetan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thetan
That's what
or
they read with the
thetan.
e-meters. Like basically when you start
Well, you
rocking
got your clear and your pre-clear and you got your theta and your pre-clear and your clear. And you go through the auditing, they call it.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about Scientology, but I know a little bit about Scientology.
I know.
So to me, all
a little
religions
bit.
kind of have a lot of commonality with them.
Yeah.
They all sort of have the Trinity in them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll say the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, or the mind, thought, action, or the steam, water, ice levels. So they all have the same kind of stuff. There's the theta being, and then there's your pre-clear sinner, and then
Yeah.
you've got your Christ-like clear.
It's very interesting.
And if you are a Scientologist and I explain that kind of good, let me know. I'd be kind of curious. But that's my take on it. But I get
a
all
little
that.
higher up to know more of the stuff about it.
I just go with the basics of it because some of it is neuro-linguistic type stuff.
Sure.
When you're going through and changing the like. I remember they used to have the Dianetics thing on TV, and they talk about the barking dog, and you got a fear of dogs. And whenever you see a dog, then you get this energy.
Yeah.
I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're holding on to those meters, and so what do you think of dogs? And all of a sudden, the needle would do that, and you got to fix that. And so what do you think of dogs? What do you think of dogs? And eventually, you chill out, and then the meter kind of goes down, and now you're a little more clear.
Fun.
So now let's deal with your fear of snakes.
Sure. Interesting. I don't know.
What do you got? He's got a thing that
it's
that is from one of them space people.
It's a plumb bob for anybody who knows what that is.
Oh, it's
plumb bob.
That's another word for a contractor's pendulum.
This particular one though is from a game.
Okay.
I got this years and years ago whenever I bought the USB. It's whenever they were first starting to move to USBs for games back in the day. Now you just download them. But for a while they were moving away from discs and they were moving towards USB.
Right.
So I bought the game, and the game came on a USB that went on the top of this, and it was a little keychain. It's a plumb bob. It's for The Sims. It's a game.
The Sims
used to be made Sims, and it used to be it's a simulator, so it's called The Sims, right? And you're simulating people. So
why is that a plumb bob?
Well, I mean, it is a plumb bob, the actual plumb bob, but it's their symbol on the screen. Like this is the symbol that they use for The Sims. It has this little symbol and it spins right above the eye. I
thought that a plumb bob was a thing that a construction person used to line stuff up using gravity and making a straight line.
Goes back much further than that.
Oh.
Yeah, plumb bobs go, I mean, they use them in dowsing. They use them all kinds of different things. But if you go really far back, they used plumb bobs to detect the spin of the Earth. So they actually could tell where you were at as far as on the axis of the Earth.
Wow.
Based off of how it moved. And they used to use these in ancient Greece and in ancient Rome in order to be able to tell exactly where they were at as far as latitudes went.
Wow.
Yeah.
Much smarter than I just got GPS.
Yeah. This is how it's
old time GPS.
They would use these because you know how they talked about how in ancient Rome they would get the roads perfectly straight. for miles and miles and miles. They would get those roads perfectly straight. And if you look at them from space, the perfect geometric patterns and everything else. This is how they did it. They used a plumb bob, and it would make marks in the sand, and they would be able to tell exactly where they were at based off of the patterns it was making.
God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. They would take
So that's more of a pendulum now than a plumb bob. So I thought a plumb was for plumbing, straight lines, gravitational lines.
Yeah, but that's
Deep.
when they started using them. Way back in the day. It's fascinating. They
How
still
long
use them
ago?
they still have them on boats. If you don't have equipment, they use the plumb bob. They'll use basically like a pendulum. And they use the pendulum to tell where the sway of the boat is, and then they have a thing on the bottom that actually tells you where the degrees are. And then you can use your sextant and all the rest of that to see where you're at based on the stars. And then you see where the tilt is based off of what you're tilting as far as degrees go. And then they take all that data and you can find where you're at on the map.
I'd rather have hire a travel agent. This sounds like too much work.
Yeah. I was actually talking about this the other day on my TikTok. I do videos on a TikTok, and somebody was talking about how the sun, if you look at sky maps, like the apps on sky maps, it looks like the sun has never moved out of Virgo. So literally the sky maps have been frozen now for 2 months. They haven't moved. They haven't updated. And everybody's like, there's all these conspiracy theories out about it. Why hasn't anything updated? Of course, most of the people are like, "Whoa, look, it hasn't done it in the sky." And it's like, no, you're looking at a map that doesn't equate to what you're seeing in the sky. So I was telling them how to tell the difference between what was in the sky versus what they were looking at on the sky map. And I said, you just stick a stick in the ground, and then you wait till the sun is at a good angle, and you have a good clear line, and then you measure that angle, and you check what that angle is based off of the shadow and the stick, right? And you see what the angle of the sun is, and then you compare it to the map as far as what the map is supposed to be. And you can tell that the sky map is wrong. If it's wrong, it means that GPS data and NASA data hasn't been updating. And my opinion on that is because we're in wartime, they stopped updating it because they don't want our enemies using our own data against us.
That's a good theory.
Yeah.
I think I followed some of that, and when you concluded, it makes sense that that could be the issue.
It's huge right now, though. It's totally like, it's a big thing. If we were to punch it in, if we were to like tag our video on sun hasn't moved out of Taurus, ? There's so many people that are searching that right now. We would get thousands of views. It's ridiculous.
I'll probably do that.
Yeah, I did. One of the biggest videos that I did was that TikTok. I had 900 views in 45 minutes. Took me 45 minutes to get 900 views, and I don't have very many followers.
Deep stuff.
Yeah.
I'm tapped.
Yeah, I think actually it's almost that time, right? Yep, 5:50.
It is. I think we should shut it down.
Yeah.
We went from time bending to mind bending.
Sure.
It's interesting because some of the things that we talk about, I think that I'm on the same page as you, and you should know about it. And then there's some things you talk about, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I'm learning some new stuff here with my friend Casey.
You know, it's really interesting. Before we go, I'll just mention this really quick. It's fascinating. So if you look at the concept of time and the concept of the way the brain works, and then you look at some of the research that people have been privately doing on things like DMT, and which is a psychedelic. I mentioned the word. Oh no, they're gonna take away our one viewer we get every week. So
Well, you never know. That's the live viewers. When this stuff goes on the internet and let the algorithms do their thing, you never know what's going to happen.
right. But anyhow, so in regards to that, it's pretty fascinating. So people are actually coming up with a lot of very interesting, succinct things to talk about, and people should look that up. How time and DMT are related, and they talk about how the DMT breaks you, because our minds do work outside of this 3D dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And that we just have to realize that we're not actually in the 3D dimension for us to be able to function on a higher dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what the big trick is. And DMT forces you out of this dimension. And then all of a sudden there's other beings that are there. Time works differently and everything else. And some people like to say, oh, but that's just a hallucination. Why is it that around the entire planet, people who are experiencing DMT hallucinations all describing the same beings and the same interesting effects that are happening with time? And some of the effects as far as space and time goes that people have witnessed, people who are sober have witnessed people who are on ayahuasca or the other different like DMT things experiencing time differently. They've witnessed it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, it's super, super fascinating. I mean, down to where there's like a couple of famous ones. There's like one guy who ended up hooking up his buddy to go experience a trip with ayahuasca. And when he did ayahuasca, he shot into the same place that his buddy had gone to, but his buddy had never told him anything about where he would go. And he was telling him, oh yeah, I'm in this like carnival place right now. Oh, and there's the people here just love you. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. And he goes, no, they actually really love you. And there's a blue lady here. And this blue lady, she's like in love with you. And apparently, like one of his hallucinations that he has very regularly, that he has very regularly is he goes to this carnival and this blue lady who's a performer at this carnival, this like alien DMT entity, right? They spend a lot of time together whenever he's on these trips, and it's like his otherworldly lover, right? And so they actually have this emotional connection when he's in that space. Of course, he thinks, because once he comes back, he's like, oh, that's all just a hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
But now his buddy, because he doesn't tell anybody about that, now his buddy is having the hallucination that's exactly the same and talking about things that only that blue lady should know.
Mm-hmm.
And saying, oh yeah, she really knows, she's like in love with you. And he's like, oh my God, and he's floored. And so then he tells the story about this place that he's visited. So yeah, so talking about time bending and stuff, yeah, people should look that up for sure.
Yeah, the time's not really relevant.
Yeah.
When you get into the other spaces, because as you're outside, we'll end on that time is just a dimensional thing of like mass and distance.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you can measure time. That's
Yeah.
a Scientology term too: mass, energy, space, and time.
Sure. Well, space and time, of course, are directly related because the
space and the distance. It's longer space. It's going to take longer time to get to where it is.
Right.
But if you get rid of all that stuff, then you're doing the wave particle thing.
Yeah.
You're either moving or you're not. You're an observer or you're the subject.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Yes.
We'll have to do this again next time. We would love to see comments. So if you have questions, comments, we know tons of weird stuff, just ask.
See you later.